Hello and welcome to the first ever Felix Fund podcast. Today I am joined by Karl Frankland, Chairman and Founder of Felix Fund. Karl, thank you for joining us today and to talk about the charity. The Felix Fund was started in April 2011. Can you tell us why the charity was set up and explain what it was like in those early years?
Yeah, hi Melanie. Thank you for the invite. So prior to Felix Fund, there was precious little, I guess, in the way of support for our community. We had trauma risk management mechanisms in the army, and they were, and still are in place, but they fell short of really addressing the needs of our operators and the teams coming back from operations, and they completely missed the needs of families and loved ones. So, although we had, frankly, world-beating medical support available to the armed forces over in Afghanistan, and obviously before that, Iraq, the provision of bespoke support to EOD and search teams, in particular, dealing with mental health issues, was quite inadequate. So, obviously we had, many lives were lost, and we had countless servicemen and women injured within our own community in particular, and they suffered the loss of a lot of friends and colleagues and loved ones. And the physical injuries received by a number of EOD and search and military working dog handlers and ECM operators and infantry escorts coming home provided us really with a stark reminder of the real genuine need to care for our own in terms of time of need. But obviously it wasn't just those people carrying physical injuries that needed the help. And a lot of our EOD and search family bore quite a lot of mental scars that were not, and in some cases still are not, readily seen. So in terms of using that as a backdrop, Felix Fund was born distinctly from a need to exercise an additional duty of care to our EOD and search community, beyond that which the MOD provides, and focus not just on the physical need, but offering financial assistance, through grants and mental resilience training and signposting, importantly, to wider support networks where that was required. So Felix Fund was enabled, therefore, to kind of provide that timely, direct and tailored assistance, and as we say, by the community for the community. And at the start, we were in the middle of Operation Afghanistan, as I've mentioned. So this was a daily news feature for the public, and there was a great deal of support for us out there. And we were fortunate to benefit from some sizable donations from corporate entities and individuals who were really keen to assist the EOD community. So that's really kind of wraps up how we were back in the early years, I guess.
That's great. And you've touched on sort of some of the help that was given. Can you just sort of tell us how the charity provided help at that time? Was it through grants? Was it through other means of help?
So yeah, there's grants, but to expand a bit, the chance of, as any operator would tell you, that the chance of death or serious injury is a bit of a sword of Damocles, if you like, and over time this pressure can really take its toll. I mean, not just on them, but their families and loved ones, and coming to terms with the physical and psychological aftermath of some of those ordeals is extremely hard. So in terms of key support that we provided at the time, recognizing this, Felix Fund created a very successful what we called normalization program in 2011, and the aim was to bring together EOD and search teams who'd served together in Afghanistan, and allow individuals to re-engage with each other, if you like, in a relaxed environment, using numerous team building exercises to kind of help peel back the mental layers. And those breaks really facilitated a journey towards greater well-being, mindfulness, and also future mental resilience. And I think we had about 100 teams benefited from that kind of experience, and the feedback was really encouraging. So that was, if you like, our main effort. But alongside that was delivering bespoke and timely grants to EOD operators serving and retired and families and loved ones.
Okay, so the world has changed. Felix Fund has now been in existence for 12 years. Can you tell us how has the charity evolved over that time?
Yeah, sure. So we've moved on. Afghanistan is, if you like, receded in memory from a public point of view, at least, and we've tried therefore to draw the public's attention to the fact that EOD operators or operations are still ongoing. Especially in the UK, where operators deal with on average, about 2,500 jobs a year. And some of these tasks are pretty traumatic, as we saw in the Manchester bombing. So it was important for us to ensure that we evolved over time, and both in terms of maintaining public support, but also in the way that we delivered what was normalisation, but in a way that provided individuals with mental resilience tools to help them cope with their job. And we can expand on that a little bit more later, I guess. But we drew on the positive lessons from the normalisation breaks, and we then created what is now our flagship dashboard program, and that's been running since 2016, I think. And it consists of some tailored mental resilience training, which is delivered residentially and also has been done online, especially during COVID. And that was designed to equip our EOD and search personnel with the mental tools, if you like, to identify stress warning signs early on and take some proactive steps to deal with them. And then actually an analogy that a colleague used was, we're all used to driving along the motorway, and when we see an oil light come on, we pull our car over and eventually anyway and take it to the garage to get it fixed. But unfortunately, for many of us, when the oil light comes on in our head, we're not so good at pulling over and fixing ourselves. So hence the analogy and the term dashboard course. So really, the aim of dashboard is to provide prevention, I suppose, rather than cure, which you could argue was part of the aim of the normalisation breaks. And it's testament to the fact that we've got quite a long waiting list for people coming onto the course, and we've had numerous plaudits showing how popular and well regarded dashboard is. I'm really proud of it, and I know the rest of the trustees are as well.
Yes, it's a tremendous thing. So for you as an individual, what does it mean to you to be a founder of Felix Fund and to still be on the board as chairman and trustee? To
me, it means everything, frankly. It's a way of acknowledging the past and, ongoing sacrifices, putting it bluntly, of our community, and using the term paying it forward, I think is very appropriate. As a previous operator myself, along with other trustees, I think I've been pretty well equipped to understand the needs of operators and their teams, and indeed having families of our own, but also the pressures that they too are under constantly, because it's quite often we forget the fact that it's not just the EOD operators that suffer and their teams that suffer pressure, it's the families back home as well. So I think having that background of my own, being on operations myself as an operator, the paying it forward piece has been really key for me. So I'm hugely proud to be part of Felix Fund.
The Board of Trustees consider all grant applications. Can you just run us through a brief what that process is like?
Yeah, sure. So bids are passed to the trustees through any channel really, for consideration, and where small sums are involved, our policy allows for a single trustee to approve grants, which is useful because it enables really timely response to need. If the sums are larger than that, of course, then the trustees will consider bids by a majority vote. And I have to say, it's actually rare for applications to be refused, and if they are, it's normally because we have to ensure extra levels of due diligence and just asking for more information. But we're quite proud of the fact that we're in a position to offer immediate support in a matter of days in many cases. So rather than an individual having to go to half a dozen charities and get a small amount of money from each, which over a protracted period of time, we are in a position where, if we deem it appropriate, we can pay the full amount to meet that need. And in terms of grant making, I think Felix Fund has raised almost £3 million in its time, and provided in excess of about £1.5 million in direct grants since 2011, which is quite a staggering amount, really. And it's testament to the huge amounts of donations that the charities receive from the EOD and search community, and the work and effort that people have put in order to contribute to their own charity. And they've been keen to help their own, and we've also had external supporters and corporations wanting to show their respect for the job that our professionals carry out. And to give some examples, beneficiaries rank in the hundreds, but a few stand out for me. We've had speech therapy and physiotherapy treatment for a clearance diver who suffered a stroke. We've contributed funeral costs for the mother of a young sapper. We've provided replacement parts, or funded replacement parts for a powered wheelchair for a former soldier who was injured in Afghanistan. We've provided money for rowing equipment for a soldier that was selected to row in the Paralympic Games, and some financial support to a soldier that required some pioneering, actually, limb surgery and assistance to and we've provided some assistance to the children of those who have sadly died in the line of duty for some educational costs, and that's through what we call our Holly Davis Memorial Fund. But I mean, there are many more, but that's principally how we would consider grant applications, and some of the examples of where we've delivered.
That's great, thank you. So where do you see Felix Fund going in the next 5 years?
Well, I'd like to see us continue, obviously, and even expand on our dashboard program for a start. It'd be great to think that one day we might be able to establish our own dashboard centre, but importantly, there's always going to be a need to offer bespoke support to individuals as well. So quite often we get requests from people that they've long since stopped serving, but now really need our help, and a lot of the time these things don't manifest until years later. So I want us to be able to continue to do that. Equally, I want to constantly reinvigorate public support for what we do. As you mentioned before, as a co-founder and chairman, I'm really keen to spread the word and just expose the work that Felix Fund does to as wide an audience as possible, really. I mean, there's no better way of achieving that than pulling in support from corporations, patrons, ambassadors, individual fundraisers, especially people that are high profile. And that support comes in quite a lot of flavours, ranging from ad hoc or regular and overt support to some key events. I could name our Felix Festival that has happened every other year, apart from COVID. And has been hugely successful, through to simple statements of support placed on the website. I mean, that all helps. I mean, we're now in our 12th year as a charity, and there's a lot more to be done in servicing the needs of our EOD and search teams, whether they're serving or retired, and as I mentioned, families and dependents. And to do this, it's absolutely critical that we're able to rely on, for want of a better word, the oxygen that individuals, groups and companies can lend to the cause, and coupled with the individual donations and some outstanding community fundraising efforts, I think Felix Fund is going to be pretty well placed to assist the community for, I hope, many more years to come. It's strange, though, because you kind of hope that people didn't need the charity, if that makes sense. So ideally, no one would need the help and we wouldn't exist. So you could argue that would be the ultimate aim, but sadly, I think that it's always going to be the case that people are going to need help. And as I mentioned before, because these problems manifest over time.
Absolutely, yeah. The reality is that charities are always going to be needed. So you mentioned COVID. Having got through the pandemic, how do you think the financial crisis is hitting charities generally, and in particular the smaller ones?
Well, I think COVID hit us quite hard, like many charities, and of course, beyond that, the cost of living crisis has only kind of compounded the issue in terms of fundraising, and we have to be mindful of that. But the good thing, I guess, is that the general public has got a great history of being really good supporters of worthy charities, and regardless of the hard times that they're suffering. So I hope that's going to continue. But yeah, we're very mindful of that, and we've taken out appropriate measures to ensure longevity of the charity to get us through hard times, and that is a series of mechanisms we've applied that work well, and that's through being careful with the money, that has enabled us to get through the pandemic, and sadly, many military charities fell by the wayside during COVID. So I'm very fortunate that we've had a good team behind us to make sure that that's not happened. And of course, also we've had the continued support from our own community that's kept us going. So I think we're in a good position. I think we have ridden the storm pretty well, and hopefully that will take us into the future. Great.
So getting back to you as an individual, when did you join the army and what led you to choose that particular career?
So I joined the army in 1989 as a driver in the Royal Corps of Transport. So I had no ammunition background whatsoever. It didn't even feature in my head. I didn't really know much about explosive ordnance disposal, or EOD as we call it, until I had to attend the Ammunition Technical Officers course in 1997, which was as part of the Royal Logistic Corps. So the Royal Logistic Corps was an amalgam of numerous other corps, including the RCT in 1993. So, I had to go and do that course. And in fact, even then, I didn't know I'd be doing EOD at some point. I actually thought I'd just be counting ammunition. And it was only when I sat in the classroom on the first week of the course in Shrivenham, and we had a lecture from our explosives professor, and he mentioned how important it was to understand this, especially for when we go and do EOD duties afterwards. So I had to turn to a colleague next to me and ask, and said to him, I thought that was somebody else that did that. And he said, nope, it's us. So that was interesting, but the course was fascinating, and by being exposed to the course and visiting Kyneton, which is kind of the mothership for EOD, if you like, I was brought into a really tight-knit community of really extremely professional soldiers who were doing something that most people wouldn't comprehend doing, and I just wanted to be a part of it, really.
Right. There's certainly a unique group. Can you give us an example of an experience that you had as an operator?
Yeah, I could give you dozens. I won't go through any of the dark moments, frankly, but I could give you a couple of snippets from. So I remember being on, I think, my first operator tour in Afghanistan. Spent some time clearing some IEDs along a track between some compounds, and one particular one was taking an age to deal with. And this is an example of the kind of support that you have. It's not just about the EOD operator, it's about the whole team. And I remember I probably spent a good hour or so trying to work my way around this IED. It's quite an uncomfortable experience lying on the ground for ages, and I drew my knee up to get a bit more comfortable. And all of a sudden my ECM operator, so my signals operator, shouted from his vantage position. He had some binoculars on me, and he shouted, "Stop!" And so I stopped. That was the drill. You just freeze. And he told me to look down at my right knee, and I'd actually managed to bring my right knee up onto a second IED, which I hadn't seen. And thankfully, because of him, I managed to deal with that one as well. But that could have been a very short finish to my tour, frankly. I remember being in contact for the first time with my team, and all of us, it was the first time for all of us being under contact and from some Taliban who were about 100 meters away shooting at us from some tree line. And there was a very, very short wall, a very, very shallow wall that we dived behind. And it's an interesting point about, you know, the mentality of individuals when faced with extreme stress is that all of us started laughing. I have no idea why, but we started giggling like kids, which was interesting. I had another issue where we were called up in the middle of the night about 3 o'clock in the morning when we were staying overnight in Camp Bastion, I think it was, and we got told to go out to the airfield because they thought they'd found a landmine, which we had to go and deal with. And after 3 hours of working through to get to it, and then getting to it, we then discovered that it was actually a hubcap off of a 4-wheel drive, which was a bit tedious. I remember, I'll make this the last one. I remember conducting a controlled explosion in Lashkar against a device that had quite a large main charge, and that was the only way to deal with that particular incident at the time. And unfortunately, try as we might to minimise damage, sometimes you do get a little bit of collateral damage. And on this occasion, I managed to blow the windows out of the new ops room in the police headquarters in Lashkar. And I remember going to the ops brief the next day, and this came up that they mentioned that an EOD operator had managed to damage all the windows in the police headquarters, and the briefer was quite critical, which frustrated me. So I stood up and explained that I was actually doing them a favour, because that when the ops room had been built, they actually stated that they were bomb-proof windows. So I clearly demonstrated that they weren't. You know, as I said, I thought I'd done them a favour. But yeah, that was a bit of an embarrassing moment. But overall, I think, you know, as I said, lots and lots of experiences. I know if you chatted to any operator over a beer, they will maybe give you one or two. They're quite reserved, ultimately. I'd say most operators, if not all, would not want to sit and swing the lantern, as we say, over all the numerous stories they've had, because quite a lot of them they don't want to talk about, frankly. As a group, I think they're pretty calm, quite focused, interestingly risk averse. I know people think that all EOD operators are mad, but actually they want to minimize risk. Absolutely. They really want to be in control. It's just the nature of the beast. So many of them would say to you that the actual job itself is the bit where they feel completely in control. You know, they've been well trained for that job. Where they feel out of control is when they're crossing open ground, potentially being shot at, when they're flying to or from devices in rickety aircraft and helicopters. You know, that's the bit that they're exposed and they don't feel as in control. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why I think we've got, I've certainly had a lot of respect for our infantry soldiers and all the people up front, if you like, because they had to do that every single day. So yeah, so there's a couple of dits, as we say, for you.
They're great, thank you. So how do you think the new generation of EOD personnel will deal with their careers and what all that entails?
I think in the same way as their predecessors. You know, it's an extremely proud trade, as I've mentioned, and it's a pretty exclusive club to get into. You'd be amazed at what people put themselves through to pass their EOD courses, because they want to belong to, you know, a unique and highly respected group of people. And there's a lot of rubbish about new generations and the fact that they're less hardy. But in my experience, that's actually not the case. I mean, sure, they view life differently, but when it comes down to the job, they're just as committed and focused as anyone before them, and after. So, you know, there's always us crusties that give them tips along the way as well. So no, I think we're in a good position, and you know, the future's good for all our new operators coming through. And it's what's nice as well is, I think the training has changed radically as well. So it's very much focused on drawing the very best out of individuals, making them feel part of the team, and that brings out the best in people. So it's actually quite a much more enjoyable experience going through training now than perhaps it might have been in previous years.
Okay. So to finish, can you give us one outstanding moment of Felix Fund over the past 12 years?
Wow. I think receiving a letter from the Prime Minister, as was then David Cameron, acknowledging the efforts of the charity and its support of the community was huge, and it certainly spurred me on personally. But equally, frankly, every time we're in a position to help someone and they come back to us to say thank you, it reinforces why we exist. And to be honest, the most outstanding thing is that we're still here after 12 years doing what we do. And that's, I think I mentioned this before, this is a reflection of the fact that there is a need, and there'll continue to be a need, which, as I said, it's strange, because on the flip side, you kind of wish that we weren't needed. So, yeah, I think that would be those would be my outstanding moments, I guess, over the last 12 years.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. That's been fascinating talking to you. And thank you for being our guest on our first ever podcast.
No, you're welcome. Thanks, Melanie.